Kids in the back. I'm ready.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. How is it going?
There we go.
That is very bright.
Turn it down a little
That's better.
bit. That's better. That seems a little bit more balanced.
Let's bring the thing over. There we go.
Hey, Brandon, Kayla, Methane Output, Dan, and Glenn. How are you guys today?
Hello, everyone. I am just pulling up the story.
144p, Dan. We don't do anything worth looking at as long as you're able to hear us.
For me, it's 1 a.m. and I just finished university stuff, so I'm tired, but I'm staying awake for you, hopefully.
Oh, well, thank you.
Hi, Dan.
But hey, you gotta go to bed.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. That was completely unnecessary.
That was. Alright, at least he didn't pull out anything important. Jackson just got tangled up in my cords. Almost unplugged everything.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Just been really busy, and Ramona was home all week, so we couldn't stream last week.
Summer vacation.
Summer vacation. How's the bunny?
Forgot what I was gonna say. That whole debacle just kind of threw off my thought process. Jackson, come here. Jackson.
Magnificent orange.
It's like, no, last time I came over, things fell on me and I got tangled up. There. Come on, buddy. You can come over.
She's doing great. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so happy that the bunny is doing good. That makes me happy.
Right? Oh man, what was his name? Lucille Ball?
Right? Lucille Ball. Yep.
Yeah. Great name for a bunny.
That is a great name for a bunny. 57 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not cold.
That is freezing.
That is not cold. That is not even cold. That's nice outside.
Yeah, you're crazy.
No, that's nice outside. That's like maybe light jacket weather.
It was like 70 degrees today and I have a hoodie on.
Kayla's like, it is in Australia. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. We do have an official email.
Yeah, we do.
I would love to see a picture of the bunny. Do you want to
yeah.
put in the email?
I was going to say, yeah, you can see it on the page, but I'll type it in the chat for you.
It's 104 in Texas. Ugh. That's horrible.
That's a little too hot for my liking.
Oh.
Except you guys got that dry heat there, so it's not so bad.
That's true. That's true. It's not humid like Georgia, Florida.
Yeah. That's the heat that kills you.
Which I would imagine Australia would be the same way. It's dry.
I feel like parts.
Maybe might be humid, but I feel like a lot of it's got to be dry heat.
I don't know. My whole idea of Australia was thrown out of whack because it was like a few years ago I saw a video of kangaroos like hopping through snow in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And like the comments were like, yeah, it snows in parts of Australia, what'd you think? And I was just like, I just never associated snow with Australia, but
Fair
yeah,
enough.
it's just like the opposite side, you know, the south gets the snow.
Yeah, because it's so far south. I mean, that makes sense. But I mean, to be fair, when most people think of Australia, they think of the red desert and Ayers Rock and all of that.
Yeah,
The outback kind of thing.
exactly.
I mean, I want to see kangaroos hopping around in the snow. Where's that video?
I mean, I'll pull it up for you after this.
I mean, we know I'm obsessed now with kangaroos. What the heck? I want to see them hopping in the snow.
I wonder how the Marauders feel about 104-degree weather up
Right?
in the UK.
Probably not into it. Because I remember Katie saying one day it was in the upper 80s and she hated her life. So.
Just imagine Sirius and Lupin just...
James like, what were you doing? Speaking of, last time we read, I got really annoyed at
you
Lupin.
did.
Because he was on his dumb shit again.
Look, you just don't like werewolf chapters for whatever reason.
I didn't hate the last one. The last time this happened, I didn't hate it. It snows in Tasmania, New South Wales, and Victoria.
See?
Nice.
Told you. Yeah, it's just my small-mindedness American geography.
I can picture that in my head. Like where that is in Australia. I kind of know where the territories are.
Yeah.
Not all. I don't think
I
don't think if I was given a map could I draw them all, but I could probably label a couple of them.
No, I was just talking about my inability to comprehend that it snowed in Australia.
Oh. We're getting a kitten Friday. Her name is Winnie, a little tabby. A little tabby. Aww. Kitten. I want a kitten.
We have kittens.
I know we have kitties, but that's very exciting. Winnie, that's so cute.
We have a magnificent orange. That's enough.
A double bands.
That's true. But no one gets to see her because she's so reclusive.
I know. Double bands. Hello, Maria. Welcome to the stream.
Seeing some new faces in here.
I know, it's nice.
Welcome to first-time chatters.
I feel like there was something I was going to say. Oh, Daredevil bands. Daredevil bands.
Something relating to the story?
Yes, I was talking about how Lupin pissed me off last time.
Yeah, he was doing his whole thing where he was pushing them away again.
Yes.
He really hasn't learned from his past actions.
Yes.
Because he went into the woods without his friends to face the werewolves, and bad things happened because of it.
And he almost killed Peter because he forgot he was in his pocket.
Yeah. Starting to kind of understand why Peter might betray them.
Right? A little bit.
You shunned me, made fun of me, and you almost killed me.
Yep.
Why would I be your friend?
The seeds are being planted, I think. A little bit.
Oh, Peter, forgot you were there. Sorry.
Right. That's... Ah. It's terrible.
Yeah, it is. I still don't... I'm not, like, for Peter.
Well,
for what
yeah.
he did. I still hate him, but...
Yeah, just...
kind of seeing how it came about. Or at least in this story. For anyone who hasn't been watching this whole story, it's not actually canon.
No.
But it's very interesting.
No,
it's interesting to the point where you'd like to believe that a lot of the stuff that happens is canon.
He's trying to chew on my fingernails.
I don't know why.
I don't know. He's just trying to eat them.
Just love nibbles. That's all.
He's trying to eat them.
So,
hi, peoples.
Hey.
She will be our fourth cat. We have Casper, Pixie, and Lottie. Ah, 4 cats. Another person who's going to have 4 cats.
Four is a good number.
4 is a good number.
Keep it there. Some people think that 5 is, but 4 is good.
You gonna chew? That's awesome. Someone else is gonna have 4 kitties. We do have 4, we promise. The other ones just don't show up like Jackson does.
So, if Jackson releases you,
there we go.
You think it's time to start the next chapter?
We
find out if Lupin redeems himself again.
We'll see. We'll see. Ren wants to know if we have any other pets.
Well, you know Bailey.
So we
if
have
you've watched our other videos, you've probably seen him.
So we have a dog named Bailey and Kayla. Our cats are Jackson here,
aka J Action 009 Lives.
And then we have Harmony, Lola, and Connie,
who you will hear her refer to as Lobans.
Yes, and Harmony we call Parmpants.
And after that, we have 2 fish tanks.
Yes, and we also have 2 fish tanks. Our fish that are currently in the other tank that you can't see, their names are Davos and Nagini.
What about the Pleco?
We haven't named the Pleco yet.
I thought we named him.
No. We haven't named the Pleco.
All right. Well, we'll have to do that at some point.
And Nagini is named Nagini because we had another fish in that tank, and his name was Snape, and she ate him.
I forgot why we gave her that name. Because you gave her that name before we read that part.
Yeah.
And you just started laughing. We have to name her Nagini. Why?
Yep.
I didn't understand. And then when we read that chapter, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Good name.
Yeah. Nagini and Davos. And the Pleco, who is still nameless. We'll figure that out at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything right now.
It is not the time right now. Right now is the time for all the young dudes.
Name them Lupin.
No. I'm not feeling very Lupin friendly right now, so no. No. All right. Chapter 131, 7th year, Interlude. No, Brandon, we are just about to start. You look so self-possessed, I won't disturb your rest. It's lovely when you're sleeping, but wide awake is best. Wake up and make love with me. Wake up and make love. Wake up and make love with me. I don't want to make you. I'll let the fancy take you, and you'll wake up and make love.
You're really getting into these songs. It's funny to think that at the beginning I couldn't get you to actually sing the beginning songs.
Yes. Ah, Kayla has a fish named Sirius Black.
Oh,
nice. Very nice. What kind of fish? Tuesday, 24th of January, 1978. 7:50 a.m. James woke them on Tuesday morning, calling through the curtains. Oi, Padfoot, get up. Nearly 8, you lazy sod. I've got a free study day, arsehole. Piss off. Sirius groaned in reply, burying his head under his pillow. You'll miss breakfast. Fine, starve then, James replied. Then, seen Mooney, his bed's empty. Don't think he should be off on his own, do you? Sirius lifted the pillow from his face and looked at Remus, raising an eyebrow in question. Remus stared back in panic. Okay, James knew, but so far they'd managed to avoid his having any actual encounters with their relationship. Remus was very particular about it. He didn't want to be gawked at. He wanted to prove that everything was just the same as before, and that meant what happened between him and Sirius in private ought to be kept, well, private. He'd been fastidious about bed sharing, making sure they got up early and crept back to his own bed, or else rumple his bed sheets and head straight for the shower. But it was the full moon and he was slower than usual. "Probably gone for breakfast, mate," Sirius called back. He shrugged at Remus. "Yeah, maybe," James agreed. "Oh, hang on, I'll check the map. He's left it on his bedside table." Remus slapped his head, astounded by his own stupidity. "I'm in here, James," he shouted quickly, feeling himself turn red with embarrassment. "Oh!" They heard James stop still just outside the bed curtains. "Oh, right, of course. Sorry. I didn't think." His steps receded quickly toward the door. "Sorry, lads. See you later, eh?" The door slammed shut. Sirius snorted with laughter as Remus crawled under the sheets as if he could escape the embarrassment there. "Oh, come on," Sirius laughed, trying to pull the sheets back. "It wasn't that bad." "It was horrible," Remus replied, burying himself further. "I'll never be able to look him in the eye again." Sirius crawled under the sheets too, chasing him. "It's not like we were doing anything. You've still got your pyjamas on." "Prongs doesn't know that," Remus retorted, sitting cross-legged, facing Sirius. It was like they were under their own little tent now, and reminded Remus of camping. That was such a nice memory that he felt a bit calmer. Even better, Sirius always held his hand when they were hidden away like this, and he reached out now, playing with Remus's long, scarred fingers as though they were precious treasure. "I don't see what the fuss is about," Sirius mused, lacing his soft white fingers between Remus's, then splaying them out, then wiggling them, like a children's game. "I'm sure he already assumes some things." "See, you can't see it either." "Well, I'm a gentleman," Sirius smirked, looking up at him now. Even in the dark, Remus could feel Sirius's eyes burning. He was biting his lip, too. Remus gave a little sigh, and Sirius quirked an eyebrow. "At least we know we've got this room to ourselves." He placed a hand on each of Remus's knees and leaned in. Remus kissed him but pushed away. "No way! If we don't go down there right now, James is definitely going to think we're shagging." "Being physically intimate," Remus said piously. Sirius burst out laughing again and rolled onto the bed. "Oh, Mooney, you kill me! What happened to that rough little yob I used to know?" "Some posh boy taught him how to read," Remus replied dryly, flinging back the covers and rubbing the static out of his curls. "Right, quick shower, then we'll go down." He jumped out of bed, wincing a bit at the bright sunlight filling the dorm room. "I like the sound of that," Sirius called from the bed as Remus crossed the floor. In the bathroom doorway, he turned and gave Sirius his most withering look. "Downstairs, pervert." 8:30 a.m. James couldn't quite look at either of them in the eye as it happened, much to Sirius's amusement. Peter had his head down too, quietly shoveling porridge into his mouth, and for a horrifying moment Remus wondered whether he'd told James exactly what he had seen in their bedroom only a few short days ago. There would be too much to come back from, Remus would be sure. That would be too much to come back from, Remus was sure. He distracted himself by listening to Mary talk, which was always easy to do. She was going out with a boy on the Hufflepuff Quidditch team these days, and was simultaneously extolling his virtues and bemoaning the pitfalls of seeing an athlete. Remus couldn't help but think that Mary was preaching to the choir a bit, as of course Lily, and, if Sirius was to be believed, Marlene were both going out with Quidditch players too. "I mean, he's fit, like Adonis level," she gushed dreamily. "And talk about stamina." Marlene was rolling her eyes, and James was staring fixedly at his cup of tea, while Lily giggled behind her hands. Mary was gloriously oblivious, in her element. "But then he has the gall to whine about thigh chafing from his bloody broom," she cackled. James's ears had turned bright red, and Sirius was trying to catch his eye, a manic grin on his face. Mary carried on. "I told him if he thinks that's uncomfortable, he should try bleeding from his snatch 5 days a month." Peter practically choked on his porridge, Lily covered her face, and Marlene slammed her hand on the table. "Fucking hell, Mary, do you have to?" "What?" Mary sat up, blinking, looking as though butter wouldn't melt on her wicked tongue. "Well, you're being a bit graphic for the breakfast table," Lily said diplomatically. "We're adults, aren't we?" Mary arched an eyebrow. "We're mature enough to talk about sex." "Right, I'd better be off." James leapt to his feet, uncharacteristically clumsy, rattling the table as he did so. Lily looked up at him, surprised. "Where are you going?" "Potions!" "It's not for another 15... Okay, wait, I'll come with you." She got up, still giving her boyfriend a strange look, and they left together. "Didn't know James was such a prude," Mary commented. "No, it wasn't you, MacDonald," Sirius explained, stretching his arms over his head and tousling his long hair. "Bronzy boy just had a bit of a surprise this morning." Ow! Remus had kicked him sharply under the table. Marlene watched them both, sipping her tea with a knowing look. Fortunately, at that moment, the post owl swooped into the great hall, and a large barn owl dropped 2 letters in front of Remus's plate. He snatched them up eagerly. One was a postcard from Grant, forwarded on via the Potters, with a lewd cartoon on the front depicting a man on the seashore holding an enormous red stick of Brighton rock against his crotch. The back read, "Saw this and thought of you. Looking at flats next week. Love." Remus grinned at this and handed it to Sirius, who scowled comically. The second letter was from Professor Ferox, with a list of book recommendations Remus had requested on the history of the magical creatures classification system. They'd been writing back and forth since Christmas. It seemed Ferox was bored with his recuperation, finding himself at a loose end. Sirius watched Remus finish reading the letter. "Anything from..." he asked, giving a significant look. Remus shook his head. Nothing from his mother. Sirius tried to flash him a cheering smile. "Still time, eh?" Remus just shrugged. "Going to go to the library to see if I can find any of these before History of Magic." He held up Ferox's list. "See you later, girls." He nodded at Mary and Marlene. "See you in the hospital wing this evening?" Marlene asked hopefully. Ah, Remus remembered. It was Tuesday. He hadn't been attending the healing lessons Madame Pomfrey had kindly included him in for weeks now, too busy memorizing curses. He didn't really want to go this evening, it being a full moon, but he looked at Marlene and felt guilty. "Of course," he nodded. "See you then." Sirius bounded happily alongside Remus as he made his way to the library, mentally working through his timetable for the day. He only had 3 classes, luckily, but he'd promised to catch up with Christopher at some point, and he wanted to write back to both Grant and Ferox, and he had an arithmancy essay due. "Moony! Earth calling planet Moony!" Sirius interrupted his thoughts. "We just walked past the library, if that's where you were heading." "Oh, bollocks!" Remus turned 180 degrees and started back, Sirius still in tow. "Care to share?" "Oh, nothing, just thinking." "Not worrying, I hope, about tonight?" A bit." They entered the library and had to be quiet as they passed Madame Pince's desk. He'd actually been trying not to think about the coming moon. After all, Dumbledore had said not to. He'd said the Order was dealing with it, and Remus could only hope that that meant Alistair Moody was on the case, which made him feel slightly better. Still, Castor's warning had been ringing in his ears since Saturday, and it was impossible to forget. "I don't think we ought to leave the shack tonight," Remus whispered. "If anything happens." "It won't. Dumbledore's dealing with it," Sirius replied, leaning against the nearest bookcase casually, while Remus looked for the text he wanted. Remus had to stop himself from tutting. James and Sirius put so much faith in Dumbledore, he often wondered whether he was missing something. But then Remus trusted very few people over the age of 18, with good reason. "I know," he said calmly, "but I'd like you to respect my wishes if it's all the same to you." "Hey, don't be like that," Sirius chided gently. "Of course we will. Anything for our Moony." Remus found 3 of the books on Ferox's list, which cheered him up a bit. He then took to Madame Pince, then began to tuck them in his bag. "I'll take them," Sirius offered, holding out his hands. "You don't want to be lugging them around all day. I'm going back to the dorm anyway." "Oh, cheers." Remus handed them over. Are you going to start on that arithmancy essay? Not if I can possibly avoid it, Sirius pulled a face. See you at lunch. You're free this afternoon, aren't you? Yeah, but I'm supposed to be seeing Christopher. Then there's that essay you're not doing, and healing class. And I really want to write back to Ferox today, if I can. I think he likes getting the post, since he's not allowed out much. Merlin, Remus, Sirius was shaking his head. You've got to be at the shack by 6.
Bailey.
Bailey. Hey!
I'll go get him. I'll see what.
Sorry, everybody. We almost finished the chapter.
You can go ahead.
Are you sure? Yeah. Oop. I'm aware, Remus replied offhandedly, adjusting his book bag. It really could do with another mending spell, unless you held it just right. The seam started splitting. And are you planning to eat? Sirius continued. When have I ever forgotten a meal? Remus poked his tongue out. Anyway, I've got to run. History. See you at lunch. 1:50. I'll just wait till you sit. I saw that, Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson was mad at him. All right, I think we're good.
Well, because he's the reason Jackson had to get off the lap. 1:50 p.m. In spite of his promises, Remus was extremely late for lunch and had missed everyone except Sirius, who'd waited back. Sorry, Remus gasped as he reached the table, a little breathless from running. He sat down. Stayed back to talk to Kettleburn, then remembered I'd forgotten my notes in Professor Binns' room. History was a bloody waste, too. All the stuff I've covered in the reading. Oh, thank you. Sirius had pushed a plate of sausage and mash across the table to him. Remus dug in, eating and talking as quickly as he could. They only had 10 minutes before lunch was over, and the school choir would want the hall for their weekly practice sessions. Anyway, it worked out nicely in the end. I used the time to write my letter to Ferox and a note for Grant, so at least that's done. What's that? Sirius slid a stack of parchment across the table now. Remus drained his glass of pumpkin juice and looked at it. Arithmancy? Your essay, Sirius said casually. Finished mine, like a good boy, so I thought I'd do yours too. You what? Remus did a double take. Sirius was ridiculously good with a quill and had mimicked his own spidery handwriting perfectly. I don't believe you. How many times have you done it for Wormy? Or James, for that matter. He's still got a stick up his arse about this morning, by the way. Won't talk to me about it. Anyway, now that's done, and the letters, you're free for the afternoon. Thanks so much, Padfoot. Honestly, this is brilliant. But I did promise to see Christopher and... Nope. Sirius was grinning like the cat who'd got the cream. Just saw him. Told him you weren't well, so you couldn't see him. Sirius? Well, you're not well, Sirius responded innocently. What with tonight, you ought to be resting. I'll be fine once I've eaten, Remus replied shortly, eyes on his food, mopping up the last of the gravy with his mashed potato. He'd lick the plate if he was shameless enough. Full moons made him ravenous. When he'd finished, he looked up and found Sirius staring at him, big eyes full of puppyish remorse. Angry with me? No. Remus wiped his mouth with his sleeve and pushed his plate away in time for it to vanish back down to the kitchens. But you can't reorganize my life like that just to get your own way. I didn't mean it like that. Sirius sat up, looking shocked. You've always got so much going on, and it's insane. I mean, it's amazing because you're amazing, and you can handle it, but you don't have to. Okay. Remus frowned, getting up. He wasn't sure exactly what Sirius was saying. He'd always tried to keep busy. He liked being busy and useful to people. And you'd written so many notes for that essay, it practically wrote itself. Sirius continued as they left the Great Hall and began to head for Gryffindor Tower. "And we can go and find Christopher if you want. He's probably in the library." "Sirius?" Remus sighed fondly. "Go on, I'll post the letters for you and I'll see you for early dinner." "Sirius?" He checked the coast was clear, everyone was in lessons, and Peeves wasn't about. An empty corridor was a rare thing at Hogwarts. "Oh, bugger!" Sirius slapped his forehead. "I can't do early dinner. I've got that detention with Filch. Only for an hour, though, so I'll be out in time for—" "Sirius!" "What?" He finally stopped talking in time for Remus to catch him unawares with a quick kiss on the lips. "Shut up, you idiot," he smiled. "I'd much rather spend the afternoon with you than studying with Christopher." "Oh," Sirius blushed, looking very pleased. 2:15 p.m. Less than 20 minutes later, and Remus was completely blissed out, lying on his back with the record player at his feet and Sirius's head resting against his good hip. Bowie was singing and strumming his 8-string, and the two boys listening were sharing a spliff Sirius had charmed off a Ravenclaw earlier that week. "Does the wolf get stoned too?" "Does the wolf get stoned too?" Sirius asked, reaching for his turn. Remus shook his head, inhaling deeply and passing the joint. "Hungrier, probably," he replied, voice high. Sirius murmured. Remus exhaled and closed his eyes, settling back on the pile of cushions. It was like sinking into warm treacle. He let his thoughts drift. "Can I ask you something?" he mumbled. "Fire away, Moony." "What was Mary on about this morning?" "About the Hufflepuff Keeper's stamina. I think she was bragging, to be honest with you." "Not that," Remus chuckled. "The bleeding thing. Bleeding from her... What did she mean?" Sirius swiveled his head in Remus's lap to look up at him, wearing a bemused frown. "She was talking about, her time of the month." He raised his eyebrows as if Remus was supposed to catch on somehow. "What's that?" Remus frowned back, none the wiser. Remus, seriously?" "What?" "Girls are different from boys." "Well, I know that." Remus bristled, feeling defensive now. "Okay, so girls get this thing every month," Sirius began to explain. Remus was utterly horrified by the time he'd finished. "That's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard," he said flatly. "It's natural," Sirius shrugged. "I'll get Lily to explain it to you. I probably told it wrong. Bloody hell, you're nearly 18. How did you not know?" "Oh yeah, make fun of the care home kid," Remus tutted. "I grew up in a boys' reformatory. How am I supposed to know anything about girls?" "Explains a lot," Remus said dryly. Sirius said dryly. Remus flicked his ear sharply. "Ow!" "What's your detention for, anyway?" Remus asked, settling back again. "Hexed Crouch." "Oh, right. Him and my darling brother were tormenting some second years, but obviously he got out of it because he's a prefect," Sirius muttered darkly. He never said Regulus's name anymore, just "my darling brother," in that cruel, overly plummy accent, which Remus thought was probably to make fun of Regulus's poshness. Except, and Remus would never say this out loud, for the first few years Remus had known Sirius, he'd had exactly the same clipped received enunciation. "Ought to try and ignore them if you can," Remus advised. "I know he bothers you, but it's best just to stay out of his way. School's over soon." "I know," Sirius said, hogging the spliff. Remus reached for it, snatching his wrist. God, he loved Sirius's wrists. The bones were so fine, the veins like blue ribbon under translucent skin. His own fingers wrapped all the way round easily. He held it now and pulled Sirius's hand to his mouth, sucking the end of the joint, then letting him go. Sirius just smirked up at him. The record stopped and he had to flip it to the B-side. "I suppose I just don't want him to hurt anyone," he sighed, settling back down. "That's not your job," Remus frowned. "Feels like it," Sirius muttered, stretching. "You don't know what he was like when we were kids. He's not... I don't know. I just don't want him to do something he'll regret later on." Remus thought very hard, which was no mean feat after a full lungfuls of Ravenclaw-grown hash. "Tell you something?" he asked. "A secret?" Sirius replied eagerly, getting up to sit beside him. Sort of. But it's about Regulus. You might not want to hear it." Sirius went a bit quiet, a bit more rigid, but he nodded. "Go on." "Go on." "Remember the boggart that got me and Chris before Christmas?" "How could I forget?" Sirius replied, a note of jealousy in his voice. "Wish I'd been there. Never seen a boggart." "Werewolves not exciting enough for you now?" Remus raised his eyebrows. "Anyway, I checked the map right before Chris went to get someone, and, well, I'm pretty sure it was Regulus who put the boggart there. He and Barty were nearby." Remus craned his neck slightly so he could see Sirius's face, and now how he was taking the news. His mouth was a straight line. He looked more tired than angry. He shook his head. "Stupid prick," he muttered. "It's all her, you know. He's an idiot for wanting to please her, obviously. But it's all her fault anyway." "Your mother?" Sirius nodded. Remus didn't know what to say. They'd agreed long ago they could talk about anything but mothers, and that's the way it had been, on Sirius's side anyway. Remus didn't want to go into it now either. Everything was so nice and warm, and if they could just hang on to it a bit longer, then this would be such a good memory, something he would have inside him forever. He reached over and stroked Sirius's cheek, that perfect jawline. He sat up and shifted round to face him. "Let's forget all about that shit," he said. "It's boring." Sirius kissed him. 4 p.m. Remus walked down alone for dinner at 4, as Sirius left for his detention. It was so early that Remus was the only one there, except for Marlene, who was also attending Madame Pomfrey's healing class. "I'm so glad you're coming," she beamed at him. Marlene smiled a lot these days. "I haven't seen you properly since Christmas." "Yeah, sorry," Remus replied, beginning his second helping of lasagna, twice as big as his first. "Been so busy with NEWT stuff. I really wanted to talk to you about what happened on the train." "Oh, Remus stared at her, fork halfway to his mouth. With all the fuss about Castor and the full moon, Remus had been able to avoid talking about their strange meeting with Yasmin and Marlene on the train. He felt guilty again. Obviously Marlene had been thinking about it a lot. "Hang on," Marlene was saying, reaching for her wand. "Muffliato," she murmured. The noise in the hall round them seemed to deaden slightly. "What was that?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "Stops people listening in," Marlene explained. "Lily taught it to us. Mary uses it to gossip all the time in charms." "Wow," Remus nodded appreciatively. "So anyway," Marlene leaned forward on her elbows, eyes bright. "You and Sirius, does anyone know?" "Oh!" Remus finally set down his fork and knife, though he could have happily kept going. "Yeah, actually, James and Peter, Lily too." "Really?" "Yeah," he nodded, checking that there was definitely nobody listening. "Only recently, though. What about you and Yaz?" "No one," she said firmly. Not even Mary?" "Least of all her," Marlene said ruefully. Remus decided not to inquire further. He'd had enough revelations concerning Mary for one day. "How long has it been going on, you two?" he asked. "I had no idea." "Sorry," Marlene blushed, looking down. "I've known I was different, I suppose, for a long time now, and I really wanted to say something to you, especially after the summer, but I dunno. How do you bring it up?" "Tell me about it," Remus agreed eagerly. "Yaz's been my girlfriend since just before Christmas. She's incredible." Marlene was smiling again, and Remus could practically feel the joy radiating from her. He touched her hand gently and said, "I'm really happy for you." "Thanks." She squeezed his hand back. "But what about you? More to the point, what about Sirius?" "What about him?" "I'm just flabbergasted, really. Is he fully queer or more AC/DC?" I haven't asked. We don't really talk about that sort of thing." "You don't?" She gave him an odd sideways glance. "Doesn't it bother you, his history with girls?" "No." Remus found himself growing hot under the collar. This was exactly the sort of thing he wanted to avoid discussing with anyone. "It's not relevant." "Okay." Marlene shrugged, though she looked unconvinced. "If it works, I suppose." He didn't respond to that, and eventually the muffliato spell wore off and they finished eating before making their way to their healing class at 4:30. Marlene was planning to tell Mary, she said, when the time was right. Remus knew that argument well enough and didn't think it was really his place to offer advice. It was nice to know that someone else knew how he felt at least, even just for a little bit. The healing class passed very slowly. Remus found that he was still pretty stoned, plus quite full, which made him sleepy. He tried to listen to Madame Pomfrey's lecture on circulatory diagnostic spells, but his mind kept wandering, drifting back to his bed and Sirius. The kindly nurse assumed he was just out of it because the moon was close, and didn't chastise him as she usually might. He ought to have felt bad about it, but he was just too happy daydreaming to worry much. 6:30 p.m. Remus hung back in the hospital wing and sat quietly in Madame Pomfrey's office while she tidied a few things away, before the pair of them made their journey down to the shack together. There would only be 4 more full moons at Hogwarts after this one, Remus realised. He knew he would miss Poppy Pomfrey more than he could ever tell her. She would always be the first person who'd ever tried to make him feel comfortable, the first person who ever thought they could help. She bid him goodbye and promised to return first thing in the morning, as always. He put on the same brave face he used when he was 11 and waved to her cheerily from the bed as she closed the door. Alone, Remus stared at the floor for a bit, trying to recall his afternoon and suppress the growing dread in the pit of his stomach. He got up and paced for a bit, for something to do. In time, the door creaked open once more and James poked his head round the corner. He glanced round the room before entering, looking just as awkward as he had that morning. "Hiya, Moony," he said, pushing his glasses up his nose nervously as he entered. "No Wormtail yet?" "I think he had lines to do for McGonagall," Remus said, sitting on the bed. "Right-o," James nodded. He stood leaning against the wall. They were completely silent for a good 3 minutes. Remus tried not to fidget, but the quiet was pretty unbearable. He and James had never been awkward before. Even after Remus came out, he was the first to swear that nothing had changed. But of course now something really had changed. Something which had shifted and skewed the dynamic. James was generally good at rolling with the punches, but it seemed he had a real blind spot when it came to Sirius Black. "Lily wants to be an animagus now," James said suddenly, clearly trying to crack the tension. "Of course she does," Remus smiled fondly. "Bet she masters it in half the time you lot took." "You're not wrong," James laughed appreciatively. But that only hit a dead end, and silence invaded the space between them once more. Remus swallowed and watched James, who was looking at his feet. He'd just made up his mind to speak, to make some joke or ask about Quidditch, when James looked up suddenly, catching his eye. "Look, Moony, I'm really sorry about this morning," he said, and all in a rush, as if he'd been holding his breath. Remus blinked. "You're sorry?" "Yeah, I should have realised. You know, you two are, together, going out, whatever. I shouldn't have been so surprised." "It's okay, Prongs," Remus said kindly. "I'm sorry, we've been trying not to rub it in your face too much, and I swear nothing was happening this morning. I just sleep there sometimes." "See, that's what I mean. You shouldn't really have to sneak around," James burst out. "Really, it's not a problem. You should sleep where you want to sleep." Okay. Thank you," Remus nodded. "I don't want things to be weird," James said helplessly. "Me either," Remus insisted. "That's the last thing I want. Sirius too. I just wanted to keep a low profile because, well, he's your best friend, and him and me seeing each other, doesn't that mean—" "I never thought it did," James said hurriedly. He'd crossed the room now, his inherent good nature taking over as he sat down next to Remus on the bed. "And you're my best friend too, Remus." Remus looked down at his hands shyly. "Christ, Potter," he grinned. "Why do you always have to be so perfect?" Born that way, James shrugged, mirroring Remus's grin. Come here, Tosser. He pulled him in for a hug. Remus relaxed finally. All was well. At that moment the door swung open once more, and Sirius sauntered in the room, closely followed by Peter. Oi! Sirius barked, pointing at James. Hands off my man!
Oh, James.
He's a good dude.
You perfect lad, you.
You perfect. What a lad. What a lad.
Lily Animagus? Yeah, that would be cool.
Kayla said she's got a gold. Kayla before it said she's got a goldfish. That's her goldfish's name is Sirius Black.
Oh, okay. Oh, is it one of the like black goldfish?
Oh,
with like the big eyes.
Oh, maybe.
I guess they're little ones without the big eyes with the black, but normally when they're black, they're the ones with like the big
yeah.
bulbous eyes.
By the way, Mike said he sent us the picture.
Oh, awesome. So we'll check that out.
We'll have to check that out.
Okay, so that was a long chapter, a lot to unpack, but why do they still have detention? Everyone always has detention, but we have not heard of any good pranks recently. Like, what are they getting in trouble for?
I think, like, when Sirius said, like, I hexed Barty Crouch, I think they're just doing a lot of that kind of stuff in the corridors.
Yeah, maybe. Stuff like that. Even Wormtail, I guess.
Well, they said, didn't the last time they say he got detention for not being dressed in his uniform appropriately?
Oh, was that?
Yeah.
Something? Okay.
And Kayla says, yes, her goldfish is black and has the big googly eyes.
Oh, okay. See, I know.
So much happened. Remus didn't know what a period was. Like, for real? I was with Sirius on that one. Like, what, dude? For real?
Okay, Kayla, thanks for dropping by.
Yeah, Kayla, thanks for popping in.
Yeah, that's... I mean, I get it. He never had any interest in girls, but at the same time, he had, like, Lily and everyone as, like, best friends for so long. You know, he never heard them over talking.
I guess not. I also kind of love Mary's whole sexual freedom thing. She kind of seems like she's the representation for sexual revolution. Like, why can't we talk about sex? Well, why can't I talk about this stuff? You guys are being prudes.
Yeah. She's always been like that, too.
Yeah, she's always been very open about things.
So I mean, like that. Like, why are they shocked about that?
It is the 70s.
Yeah, I know, but they've known her since first year. This is 7th year.
I think...
And she's always...
Right, but I don't know as they were ever expecting her to talk about that. And even today, people are just like, don't talk about that.
Yeah, true. Alright, there, how about... Oh, Billy's foot is stuck in my pocket.
Oh.
There we go. Just gotta turn him around.
He just coughed straight into the mic. Mary's gonna be an organizer of the topless protests. She could be. That's kind of the vibe she gives me, is that she's kind of that kind of person. The sexual revolution, Bailey. I can't get to defeats.
Broadmort.
I can't get defeats.
I don't know. Again, it's like... I mean, I guess I get the awkwardness of, you know, having to sneak around and everything. But, I don't know. I hope this whole thing... I feel like this has been going on too long with Remus being awkward around James and everyone about it. Like, I thought it was going to end once he came out.
And it's just still happening.
Yeah, it just seems like it's going on too long.
I'm hoping that this was kind of like the end of it.
Yeah.
That James was just like, dude, it's fine. I'm sorry, I was being weird. If it doesn't have to be weird, do it, just do you. Remus being weird about it is making everyone else be weird about it.
Yeah.
Sirius went from like one end of the spectrum all the way to the other, and he's like, who cares?
Exactly.
Peter is still very much like, but Peter also like,
Peter doesn't count. We
but
don't care about Peter.
but Peter did walk in on things happening.
That's true.
He was not ready.
He didn't just catch them asleep in bed. He got them awake in bed.
Yeah. That was a great moment. Dan Williams says, I can understand why Remus doesn't know about the Red River. There's no health or sexuality class. That's true.
That's true.
They don't teach anyone about puberty at all. There's no sex ed of any kind.
I agree, but I mean, outside of Sirius, James, and Peter, all of his friends have been like girls at Hogwarts.
Right.
I'm just surprised he hasn't like overheard anything or them talking about it.
That's true. As he was friend with Lily and Marlene, and maybe they
And we know Mary would have just said it.
Yeah.
Like the way she is, you know she's complained about it once or twice before.
Maybe
Maybe just thought that she sustained a wound in combat.
Maybe they didn't talk about it around Remus specifically. Like they knew he was in earshot. They didn't talk about it. I don't know.
Either way.
Either way.
That was a long chapter for not a lot out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
It was Remus kind of bonding with James.
Mm-hmm.
Getting more comfortable with being out.
Mm-hmm. Having that conversation with Marlene, which I guess was kind of nice.
Yeah.
To have someone else to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's nice that there's more than one gay couple in the story.
Yeah.
And he's just...
And it's also not another guy, so we don't have to have jealous Sirius.
Right. I mean, we have Christopher and Grant, who are these other gay characters, but now we actually have another gay couple. It's just nice to kind of have something else going on, and I think Marlene's issue is that she's in love with Mary.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's her trouble.
But is it not meant to be?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But is Mary just like overcompensating? Like Sirius kind of was.
Right, maybe she is. Maybe Mary is overcompensating. Maybe Mary deep down doesn't want demens. Or maybe she's bi or something. I also did, yeah, I agree, Dan. I thought that was really funny. Sirius just being open about it. Like, hey, get your hands off my man.
I know.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
That's the dynamic that it should be and can be. And hopefully Remus can let it be. Because otherwise, yeah, it's going to be weird. Because Remus is letting it be weird.
Right, I think we saw Sirius learn from Remus about just being who you are and accepting who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think Sirius is going to teach Remus to accept everyone else's, how everyone else feels about who you are.
Right.
Not to worry about their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously Sirius, he doesn't care.
Now, what's the threat that Castor made about this full moon? I don't remember that from the last chapter. They're coming for him on the full moon?
Something like that.
I was so angry I forgot. Because I didn't care. Even like this, like, everyone's going to protect you, it's going to be fine, this full moon, and I'm like, I really don't even care. What dangerous thing
You know what that
happens.
means? Next chapter is probably going to be a werewolf chapter.
Probably, because it's called Victims.
Dun dun dun.
Mm-hmm.
Is Lupin gonna kill someone?
No. He's just gonna abandon his friends again and get himself into some dumb shit that they're all gonna rescue him out of or something.
Well, I mean, he's probably going to be a werewolf, so it's not really going to be up to him.
Yeah, it's a werewolf chapter.
All right, well, let's do it.
You want to do it?
Yeah.
It's a long chapter. Well, can we take a quick 5-minute break?
Yeah.
All right, let's just take a 5-minute break. My mom wants to get her laundry.
Oh, okay.
So let's just take a few minutes. We'll be back. Maybe if I can get out.
You're like rolling over your blanket.
You know. All right. Ugh.
Right, I guess on that note, I'm gonna run to the bathroom and get a drink. Oh. Bad Moon Rising, exactly. I think the next thing I need to make is like a be right back kind of graphic to put up. Got the stream starting and everything, but we normally don't walk away during the stream, so I haven't really thought about doing it, but it would beat just looking at two empty chairs. Oh, Bad Moon Rising? I think he's just joking that with the werewolf chapter. I don't know. I don't mind the werewolf chapters. I don't think necessarily is super needed for the story itself, but I don't think they're bad either. They definitely work with the story, but yeah. I mean, yeah, like it is Remus, and the werewolf thing is like his big plot. It's the thing. Who would Remus Lupin really be if not a werewolf? I just feel like I don't know. I think this story in particular would be just as good without that, but I also see how it's important for his story. I think that's why I really don't mind him. And honestly, it's really hasn't been a big part of this story yet. So if we start seeing a little bit more integrated into the story, then it might seem less out of place than it does now. We're getting like a werewolf chapter every what? Literally 50 chapters, I think. There's been like 3 werewolf chapters. We're on like 135. So it's I don't know. Like I said, if I can drink water without choking on it. Oh. All right, that's what I mean. Like, if you're gonna do the werewolf chapters, just do them. Just get the story rolling. That might be kind of the big thing with Remus after high school to kind of keep the story going, though. Might be setting it up so that there's actually something going on. Oh, okay. Did not know that was a song. Bad Moon Rising. Maybe I'll do that for the like we'll be right back graphic. Do like a werewolf. BRB, full moon's out. Gotta go run around the Forbidden Forest for a few minutes. I would check it out right now, but I think YouTube might not like that if I'm playing other people's music on the stream. Right, we haven't had a lot of the Forbidden Forest. It would be cool to get some sort of perspective of what they do at night. Like if Remus was just conscious for one of these full moons. No, no copyright slash is needed. Please no.
Right, I'm back.
Ah, welcome back.
What have we been discussing?
Werewolves.
Oh, great.
And how if they're going to do it, they need to just do it and commit and just do a lot of werewolf chapters from here on out. You're leaving school. Remus has come out and is accepted by his friends, is accepted himself.
Right.
Now, you gotta have some other plot points to focus on for the span of 13 years after Peter Pettigrew kills the Potters. So,
Bailey has no water.
oh no. Here, I have water. So, whatever you want.
Yeah, I'll start the next chapter. Thank you everyone for being patient and waiting. Chapter 132, 7th Year, Victims. The morning after the full moon. Howling, whining, scents, animals, magic, mold. He had to get out, hunt, pack. The big one tried to stop him. The black one tackled him, but he had to get out. He was so hungry. So hungry. Remus! Remus! Wake up! His eyes snapped open as Sirius shook him roughly by the shoulders. What? Are you okay? He was lying on his back on the dusty shack floor. He was bleeding, but he didn't know where from. Sirius was bleeding too. Remus tried to sit up and winced as his head rattled and his back creaked. What happened? He gasped, throat raw from howling or screaming. Here. Sirius helped him up and over to the bed. He pulled out a goblet. Remus didn't know where he got it and whispered, Aguamenti. Sirius's hands were shaking as water poured from his wand, and he handed it to Remus, who drank greedily, spilling it down his front. He knew something was wrong. He could smell the blood and the fear and the sunrise, but it was taking longer than usual for his human thoughts to come back to him, like waking up still drunk with a hangover to boot. What happened? He asked again, frowning. Are you hurt? It's fine. Sirius shook his head. He looked very pale, not his usual aristocratic alabaster, but sickly, worried, yellowish with sweat. You just nipped me a few times. You kept trying to get out. Did I? Remus grabbed him suddenly, pulling his shirt. Sirius pushed him down gently, reaching for blankets to cover him with. He shook his head. No, we kept you here. You never left, I promise you. Where are the others? They had to go. Madame Pomfrey will be here soon. When you turned back, it was different. Harder than normal, I think. You wouldn't wake up properly, so James left me the cloak. I didn't want to leave you here. Remus lay back, his mind racing. He tried to remember, but it was all scrambled up. He only knew one thing for sure. Something really bad happened, he whispered. His own voice was trembling now, and cold dread settled in his stomach like a sickness. Sirius didn't say anything. He just squeezed his hand. He hid under the cloak as soon as Madame Pomfrey arrived, and she hurried in, with a terrible grey look on her face. He sat up, every muscle screaming at him. Poppy, he rasped. What happened? Please tell me. How are you first? She asked, coming over to feel his forehead. You're running very high. I feel fine, he lied, batting her hand away impatiently. There was an attack, wasn't there? She nodded wordlessly. His heart thumped. Who? How many? I don't know, she said very quietly. He'd never heard that voice come out of her before. For a moment she wouldn't even meet his eyes. She'd always looked him in the eye. Please, he said again. She shook her head very slightly. There's nothing I can tell you. It'll be in the morning news. I have to see Dumbledore. He's not here. She stood up. Now, can you walk? Professor McGonagall says you're to go to your lessons as usual if you're fit enough. We don't want anyone asking where you are. I'll give you something for the pain. They walked through the tunnel in silence, with Sirius behind them, still invisible. Madame Pomfrey dealt with the worst of his scratches, mostly from Padfoot, though fortunately she'd assumed he'd done them to himself, and told him to carry on about his day. He took the potion she gave him, but his head still throbbed and his body ached. As soon as she had turned a corner, Sirius revealed himself and slid an arm round Remus's back. Why are you pretending you're okay? He hissed, supporting Remus up the stairs back to their dorm. You can barely walk. I'll be fine in a minute, Remus replied, gritting his teeth. She's got enough to worry about. Ugh, fucking stairs. James said he'd send an owl to his dad right away, Sirius said as they slowly traversed the marble staircase. If anyone knows what's happened, the Potters will. Yeah, Remus nodded, wheezing. Good. But he knew that it was all no good. Whatever had happened, and it had been just as awful as Castor promised. It was the end of any chance of civility for the werewolves. Back in the dorm room, James was still waiting for a reply from his parents. Remus sat out on his bed, heavily, chest heaving, every part of him aching, his skin on fire. You should just bonk off, Sirius said awkwardly, glancing at the others. We do it all the time. Remus shook his head. He hauled himself up, clutching the bed frame. Can't risk it. We've got arithmancy first. Snape's in that. If the papers are full of werewolf attacks and I'm not there, what do you want to bet he'll be the first to start stirring? I'm going for a shower, just a minute. He could hear the other 3 marauders whispering loudly through the bathroom door, but he didn't have the energy to focus on anything except getting through the next 6 hours. He turned on the taps and let the hissing water drown them out. Werewolf attacks. Magical community demands action. Hundreds were affected by a string of brutal werewolf attacks during last night's full moon, which left 15 wizards dead and at least 5 missing, presumed kidnapped. None of the creatures responsible have been identified as yet, and the Aura's office has advised everyone to be on high alert and to consult the published ministry guidelines on identifying and approaching werewolves, which are classified as 5X and considered highly dangerous. The interim Minister for Magic has been criticised for failure to maintain the werewolf register established by Newt Scamander in 1947. Speaking for the opposition, Abraxas Malfoy released a statement in the early hours of this morning. Last night's attacks are further proof that the Ministry is in dire need of reform, and on behalf of the ancient and law-abiding magical families of Great Britain, we demand stricter sanctions on half-humans and other undesirable and potentially dangerous elements. The statement has provoked outrage in what insiders are describing as an increasingly divided ministry. No names, James muttered darkly. That's not good. Protecting the victims' families? Sirius suggested. Since when has the Daily Prophet cared about that? Lily hissed venomously. Since when is the ministry? Careful what you say, Peter whispered, his eyes wide. My cousin who works at the Prophet said they're being sent really strict guidelines on what they can write about the ministry, the war, anything. And there are spies everywhere checking on them, making sure no one's being too critical. This made everyone go quiet, and Lily looked round nervously, glancing over her shoulder. It didn't matter. Everyone in the Great Hall seemed to be talking about the same thing, huddled in groups over newspapers, whispering amongst themselves. It's not as if we're disagreeing with what the paper says, Marlene whispered, leaning forward. I hate Malfoy's politics as much as the next half-blood, but he's right about the failures of the register. The werewolves need to be contained, or stuff like this will happen, Dark Lord or not. That's ridiculous, Sirius scoffed. An organised attack like this only happens when there's someone behind it. This would never happen without Voldemort goading them. Everyone winced as he said the name. Remus had noticed that happening more and more, as the list of missing grew and people trusted each other less. They're still dangerous, Marlene replied. I don't see why we're pretending they aren't. It says right here. She jabbed the black and white print. Classified 5X. I know it's unfortunate for them, but they might have been perfectly normal otherwise. But facts are facts. No one said anything to that. Remus was doing his best to ignore all of them. He was busy writing a letter to Professor Ferox, who was the only person he could think of who'd been in potential danger last night. Livia knew him. He'd attacked her once, and Remus thought she might seem like the sort of person to hold a grudge. Besides, writing him gave him something to distract himself from how dreadful he felt, aching and shivery all over. He knew he looked awful too, and thought it best to keep his head down. She doesn't know what she's talking about, Lily whispered to him on the way out of the hall. Miles just sees everything as black and white. Don't take it personally. I don't, Remus replied tiredly. I'm fine, don't worry about me. Still, he was dreading care of magical creatures later that morning, where he'd have to sit next to Marlene. He'd cast a glamour to cover up his newest scars and was sipping on a pepper-up potion as if it were keeping him alive, but he couldn't hide the fact that he was utterly exhausted, not to mention the bone-crushing guilt he felt over the attacks. He'd known they were going to happen. He'd told Dumbledore, but it hadn't been enough. He ought to have done more. Oh, God, Remus, here we go. Lord, here we go.
A werewolf chapter through and through.
Ugh, I hate this. Arithmancy wasn't too bad. He had Sirius, James and Lily in that, and they formed a protective huddle round him, taking their seats at the back of the class. The exercises were almost impossible to do. Remus found his mind oddly fractured, unable to hold down a thought for very long. James and Sirius fell into their usual clownish mischief, creating a satisfactory distraction any time the teacher glanced up at Remus. He was so grateful, especially as they'd both been up all night too. Afterwards, Sirius walked him to Care of Magical Creatures as he had a free hour, and Remus hadn't the energy to refuse. The hallways were too busy for him to risk leaning on the other boy for support, so they just went slowly. "Just bunk off," Sirius pleaded, watching him struggle down the third flight of stairs. "You've shown your face. Snivelus has seen you." Remus shook his head, carrying on doggedly. As he reached the bottom, a couple of third-year boys rushed past, shouting at each other and laughing. One of them bumped into Remus with his bag, which would have been nothing on a good day, but at that moment was exactly the wrong thing and knocked Remus sideways into the banister. He bit his lip as the left side of his body hit the hard stone, but couldn't help letting out a gasp of pain. "Certus Corpius!" Sirius yelled, pulling his wand out and firing the hex at all three boys. They yelped as the marble staircases turned to quicksand beneath them and began to swallow them up. Sirius only stopped it when their legs were dangling through the bottom and they were trapped halfway. "Watch what you're doing," he said menacingly, before helping Remus down the last few steps. No one intervened. No one ever did when it was Sirius, and Remus was too focused on getting to his lesson on time. Promise me you'll go back and free them?" he asked as they neared the classroom. "I don't need you getting a detention on top of everything." "If someone else hasn't found them," Sirius shrugged. "I only taught them a lesson. Any prefect would have done the same." Remus would have usually found that funny, but he felt as though he was wading through quicksand too, his limbs heavy and slow, everything around him foggy and blurred. "Right," Sirius was saying. "I'll be back here in an hour to get you." "I don't need collecting. I'm not a child," Remus muttered. "No," Sirius squeezed his hand very quickly. "You're my Moony." He made a mental note to save that up for later, when he was alone, and could bask in the thought of being serious as anything. Just now he hated himself too much to allow anyone to be kind. Oh, my God. Care of Magical Creatures was worse than he could have imagined. His temperature was running even higher from exertion, and he had to keep wiping sweat from his eyes, hair sticking to his forehead. Despite breakfast having only been an hour earlier, his stomach felt like an empty cavern, growling intermittently. His head ached and his vision swam, but he sat bolt upright, staring fixedly at the blackboard. They were supposed to be doing dragons, identifying the various species and their individual properties. Kettleburn began the lesson as he always did, with a terrifying and usually harrowing story of an encounter he'd had with whatever creature they were discovering. Today was no different, and the battle-scarred professor was in his element today. He'd lost 2 limbs to dragons. Despite this animated tale, only half the class was actually paying attention. You could tell by the look of faint horror on their faces as they scribbled down notes. The other half, Marlene and Mary included, was busy reading the chapter in their textbooks which concerned werewolves. "There's something a bit sexy about the whole beast man thing, though," Mary whispered across Remus, who began to feel light-headed. "Mary!" Marlene hissed angrily. "That's completely insensitive. People died." "I'm just saying." "You wouldn't think that way anyway if you met a real one. I spoke to Sian Bolsh over the summer. She left last year for healer training, and she's been shadowing a healer on the lycanthropy ward at St. Mungo's. They have awful hygiene, most of them, because they can't live near normal wizards, and they basically live off handouts and charity." "Well, then I feel sorry for them," Mary snapped back. "That sounds horrible. Wizards are so heartless." You're being deliberately dense. They're not safe. Excuse me, Professor Kettleburn. The whole class turned to see McGonagall standing in the doorway. Remus's stomach dropped. Had she come for him? Had the Ministry finally come for him? The head of Gryffindor House looked very grave and was holding a letter in her hand, but she did not look at Remus. I'm sorry to interrupt. Marlene McKinnon, may I speak to you? Marlene frowned and stood up, setting her quill back to the inkwell. She threw a confused glance back at Mary and Remus before following Professor McGonagall out of the room. The door closed and everyone stared at it in silence. She can't be in trouble, Mary whispered to Remus. She's too goody-goody. Remus mumbled something, but his hunger had turned into queasiness and he didn't want to open his mouth. He wished he could take off his cloak. The room was so stuffy and hot. He was getting uncomfortably damp under his armpits and across his back. Are you all right, sweetheart? Mary asked, her face concerned. You look like you're going to puke. Is it Kettleburn's horrible stories? Remus nodded very slightly, shooting pains bursting up his neck as he did so. He rested his forehead in his hands, hoping he just looked like he was really interested in his notes. There was no room for Mary to probe him any more, though. A horrible shriek sounded outside the classroom, followed by a chilling moan of absolute despair. Mary was on her feet at once and flew out of the room to see her friend. Remus caught only a glimpse as the door swung open and shut, of Marlene on her knees, sobbing, and McGonagall bent over her, patting her shoulders. Even Kettleburn was rendered mute for a few moments, before regaining his composure and clearing his throat. We're living in difficult times, he said, quite out of character. I urge you all to be kind to each other, especially as you prepare to leave Hogwarts. The lesson continued after that, much subdued, and it took a lot of Remus's concentration to stay conscious in his seat now that he was alone at his desk. About 15 minutes before class was due to end, there was a second knock on the door. Enter, Kettleburn barked. The door opened and Lily walked in. Good morning, Professor. I've just come to collect Marlene's things for her. Kettleburn nodded and gestured at Marlene's desk where her work was still spread out, her book bag hanging off the back of her chair. Lily went over and quickly started gathering things together. She took one look at Remus and raised her head. Sorry, Professor. Could I ask Remus to come with me? I didn't realize Mary left all her bits too. Of course, Kettleburn nodded distractedly, labelling a diagram of a dragon's lair on the board. Chapters 18 to 25 for next lesson, please, Mr. Lupin. Yes, sir, Remus croaked, picking up Mary's bag. Thank God it wasn't heavy, and thank God for Lily Evans. As soon as they were outside in the corridor, Remus leaned heavily against the wall and closed his eyes. Oh, Remus, Lily said anxiously, raising a cool hand to his forehead. You look dreadful. I'm fine, he mumbled uselessly, eyes still shut. Just give me a second. Is Marlene? She's gone home. Lily lowered her voice, though they were quite alone. Her brother Danny was attacked last night. St. Mungo started realizing names. Remus's head swam. He opened his eyes only to see black spots and closed them again in case he fainted. Is he? He's alive, but it doesn't sound very good. The guilt was overwhelming, roaring in Remus's ears. How could he ever look Marlene in the eye again? Come on. Lily took his arm and draped it over her shoulders. She fitted very snugly, but he didn't dare lean on her too much. I'm taking you to the tower. You're in no fit state for school. I'll say you're helping me pack for Marlene. Someone ought to tell. He was about to say Yasmin, but realized it was still a secret. Madame Pomfrey, he finished lamely. Marlene's going to miss healing lessons. I'm sure she already knows, Lily said briskly. Come along now. She was a lot harder to refuse than Sirius.
Oh no.
We thought Marlene hated werewolves before.
Well, she better learn to love them because her brother is one now.
If he makes it.
If he makes it. Assuming he's going to make it. I guess, it's like a double-edged sword with them. Hate werewolves more than anything. But your brother's a werewolf. Yes, but that's different.
The guilt thing, like, oh my god.
Yeah, it does get a little much, doesn't it?
Why are you guilty over it?
Because
What the hell were you gonna do?
he was gonna go out there like some Spartan warrior and kill the rest of the werewolves.
Like,
He is a wolf for good.
I did think it was funny where Mary was like, I don't know, it's kind of hot.
Right?
She's great. She's great.
Just a were beasts.
I mean, the whole prejudice thing, I guess, is interesting. Marlene, one of your best friends is a gay werewolf.
Yeah.
Don't even know it. But the whole, like, I don't know. The whole, I feel like poo after the full moon and I hate myself. Ugh. Like, okay. We've read this.
Well, I mean, maybe it's because he's so tired that he's so mopey. What? It's hard to control your emotions when you're sleep deprived.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like every werewolf chapter. It's always like, I'm guilty. I hate myself. Blah 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 blah. I get that his character still struggles with it in the series, and it's like a thing. But just there's a reason why Harry Potter is not from the perspective of Remus Lupin, because Jesus, the self-loathing is a bit much. My God. I'm starting to get annoyed with it.
At this point, the ministry should make like a wolf retirement home. You set aside like some big island, like they have like Dog Island where all the dogs run free. And you just make like a werewolf village and just say, all the werewolves live there.
That's like werewolf segregation.
It is. It could be like a once a month retreat or something.
Oh, where they all go to like have their full moon time?
Yeah.
Depression is a constant thing. I know. Believe me, I know very well.
It's like once a month you have to show up for a ferry that takes you out to this island. You get to spend a weekend there doing your werewolf thing, recuperate, and then you come back for work on Monday. No one's the wiser.
They would rather eradicate them and
Well, yeah. But, it's a humane way. It seems like the only way that new werewolves are born is by biting people, so you isolate them when they're a werewolf. They can't bite people.
yeah, but you'll always have people like Greyback who think that in and of itself that they don't want that they want to bite other people, and then you're gonna have other people who don't think that that's fair, that it's infringing on their rights.
That's the thing about rights. They end where others begins. So
I'm aware.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's a public health issue.
It's one of those things where, you either do that, you go once a month and you get a little retreat, hang out with your buddies for the weekend, have some beers, turn into a bestial creature, and you come home, or you go to Azkaban. Your choice. It's like, until they find a cure, like, what else are you going to do? I mean, yeah, there's the werewolf registry, but you basically have to do that as it is.
Right.
Where You have to go to the ministry.
They don't have the Wolfsbane potion yet.
Yeah. But they have to go to the ministry and get locked up in a little room. So why not just leave an island and have like this whole retreat? Deal with it humanely.
Well, this is the 70s, and they don't want to do that.
That's true.
They're not very humane about a lot of things. And by the time we get to Harry Potter, they do have the Wolfsbane potion, so there's that too.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know.
what I mean. Then, like, the island would be awesome. Just go, sip some Wolfsbane potion, curl up in the corner as a little werewolf, and relax for the weekend.
Be a sun boy.
Yeah, just chill on the beach.
It reminds me of this reminds me of that part in Silence of the Lambs where Clarice Starling offers Hannibal Lecter the Plum Island deal.
Oh yeah.
Where she's like, if you give us Buffalo Bill, you get to go to Plum Island for one week out of the year. You get to walk on the beach. You get to feel the sun on your face. Blah, 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 blah. And he's like, Plum Island Research blah, 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 blah facility. Sounds charming. Just reminds me of that whole scene. Werewolf Island. Does this... I don't know. I don't know if I'm just that jaded, but I'm just like, alright.
It would even offer a glimpse at the like natural lives of werewolves. You let them roam free. As a, magical zoologist, you just fly over the island and document what they're doing and how they're acting.
To learn more about what they're doing and why they do the thing.
Exactly.
From a research standpoint, now you kind of got me a little bit.
Exactly.
I just...
Like, the whole thing just seems like a good idea. Because, I mean, we've learned from this that Remus says that he has more clarity and he isn't as vicious when other animals are around.
Mm-hmm. But how is it when other werewolves are around?
That is a good question. And you know what? If we design Werewolf Island, then we'll know.
We'll know.
Were Park.
Werewolf Park.
Just Were Park.
Were Park.
Were Park.
Oh.
W-E-R-E.
Yeah, I got Were Park. Their park.
Welcome to Werewolf Park. Oh my god, watch out!
I just, the sympathy and all of that I'm supposed to feel for Remus about the guilt and everything else, I don't have it. I don't have it anymore. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and do something about it.
Never.
It's
you can't make me.
And yeah, obviously neither can anyone else, because no matter how supportive and loving and everything everyone is, he's still like, I'm a terrible person. And I hate myself.
I'm a terrible person. No one really likes me. They're just rubbing it in my face what better people they are.
Yeah. I'm just like, I
don't know.
I just am aggravated by it. I'm like, dude, grow a little bit. Can we see some character growth? Please, for the love of God.
I think that's my biggest problem with it. It's not necessarily that he feels that way. It's that he's had multiple opportunities where you would think that he would have learned. Like, from a writer's perspective, the author has had these moments where you think, oh, he's learned from his mistakes.
Right, or he's growing as a character. His arc is continuing and he's growing. And then it's like,
It seems like every other character is growing except our protagonist, who by its
yeah,
very definition is the character that's supposed to grow the most.
right. And it's literally like he takes a couple steps forward and then something happens and then we're right back. And I'm just,
Yeah.
ugh. From a documenting depression standpoint or whatever else, like, that's all well and good, but from a story writing perspective, it's a little,
I think my biggest thing was not that he still hates himself. Whatever, he can still have that. I get it. Depression is the thing that just never goes away and
but that
it's going to
should,
be eating at him. What got me was that he didn't learn to let his friends in.
yeah,
You can still have Remus feel awful about himself,
right.
but don't do that whole thing where, no, you guys can't come.
Well, but
You
even
wouldn't understand.
like the depression in and of itself, you would think would evolve too. It wouldn't be manifesting necessarily the same way. You would think by now he would recognize it in himself and maybe, he would start feeling those feelings and maybe something like, there I go again. I'm off on my bullshit of feeling like garbage. And like, you would think a growth moment would be that I'm dealing with depression, but I'm self-aware and I recognize that I'm dealing with depression. And right now I am having here we go. We're going in a downward spiral. Here it's happening.
He's having an episode.
He's still a teenager. Well, yes. But he's not growing. You can still be a teenager and have growth. I think I would agree. It's not the depression that, like, the self-hatred thing, yeah, but I think I definitely agree with you in that it's definitely the thing with his friends. Cuz even with this, like, he's feeling like shit about himself. And all he's doing is saying things like, I'm going to be rude to Sirius because I just don't feel like dealing with anyone right now. I don't feel like being nice. So he's pushing people away. Like,
yeah.
It's fucking frustrating. Dan, it has literally been 130... 133 chapters, and he is still on the same bullshit.
There's also the fact that I don't take anything back about what I said about the story being great. I think everything else about the story is written really well, but I think Lupin needs a little bit more growth, and I think the reason why it's so apparent is because everyone around him has had so much more growth. James has grown so much, Sirius has grown so much. Even Peter has kind of grown. He's grown away, but he's still, like, developed and changing as a person. Mary has, Marlene, everyone seems to be
has developed
changing.
As a character.
Yeah. And
Lily too, yeah.
Remus did a little bit. Like, you had to, like, I don't know. I think Remus has a bit, but not as much as everyone else.
Right.
And I think that's why it's, like, so apparent.
I think that's I think that's a very valid point. I think you're right.
Yeah. And you would expect your protagonist to have the most growth.
Look at... I think some of the most obvious is maybe... Well, okay, Dan, him not having parents. I'm gonna throw it out here. The difference between, say, him and Sirius. Sirius has suffered a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same trauma as Lupin, but he has suffered some serious trauma with his family. And yet he has grown quite a lot from arrogant, childish, selfish to now he's a lot more mature and he considers others a lot more than he did. And
he has less arrogance and more confidence now.
Yeah, it's not so much cocky attitude so much as
he's just proud to be himself.
Right.
Instead of, I just want to do this because I want to piss off my mother.
Right, yeah.
And yes, Maddie, we are talking about Martyr Remus. We just read another chapter where he kind of got down on himself.
Not only did he get down on himself, but he was physically ill the whole time. And everyone told him, no, you need to go have a lion. You need to go do this. And he's like, no, I need to go to class.
He did have a point, though, about Snape.
He did. He did have a point about Snape. And then Sirius also had a good point that said, Snape saw you in class. You're good, bud. Go take a goddamn nap.
Yeah.
And Remus was like, no, I have to go learn about dragons right now. No, you don't have to go learn about dragons right now. It's fine. The author made him out to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is like my sole complaint about this story is the only thing that's bugging me about this story is our protagonist.
Remus's continued self-hatred.
Yes.
Even though he's been set up multiple times for growth.
Yes.
That's another reason why I think it's so hard is because he's had those moments for growth.
And it hasn't happened.
It hasn't developed in the story.
And as a reader,
when you expect it to.
As a reader, when you're reading the story, you recognize those moments as, oh, here is a pivotal moment for the character. This is a potential moment where we're going to see something change. Or, like, you know where those beats are when they happen. And you know, like, what should happen. And then it doesn't. And you're just like, was the protagonist not in the room? Because I was there. And what the hell?
Someone needs to remind Remus.
Like, even Sirius about his brother. Like, you can tell he's, like, absolutely wrecked about his brother. But, you know, he's handling it much more differently than he did 80 chapters ago.
Yeah.
Friends telling him, friends telling him to take care of himself. Like, oh my god.
Maybe Remus's growth will just happen like that. Something will just, snap. It's just gonna be maybe this is the event that, like, triggers it.
Something has got to give here, because, dear Jesus.
What's the title of the next chapter? Let's see.
Part of me doesn't even want to know.
I don't think we have time to read it, but we can maybe...
Do you not want to read it?
Well, I mean, we probably...
Oh, it's long. I thought maybe if it was a shorter one, but it's a pretty long, boy. Sunday afternoon.
Sounds nice. See?
It's probably going to be some cute shit about Remus and Sirius bonding together, and Sirius reassuring him that he's not a monster, and that he's lovely, and he's the love of his life. And then Remus being so grateful that the glorious Sirius Black ever looked at a demon monkey like him.
It's Sundays, it's the start of a new week. It's a new beginning for Sirius. It's also the day before Monday, arguably the most tragic worst day of the week. So,
even Canon Remus has a lot of these character struggles all the way until Teddy is born. Even Canon Remus. A demon monkey. Well,
that is true, though.
Yeah, he does, but again, that's why it's not from his perspective. I don't know. Oh, come on, man.
Like I said,
I don't think in the canon novels he's as fucking melodramatic as he is in this story.
Yeah, but now we're inside his head. We don't know. like I said, the whole self-hatred, depression thing, I get it. It's not going to go away, whatever that can stay. But the fact that he hasn't learned to trust his friends and that sort of thing, because in the canon novels, he comes across as like he trusted James and Sirius, like unquestionably.
Yeah, and that the bond that they had was unbreakable, and that's why it was so devastating when Peter betrayed them and all of that. Like, when is he going to get to that point where he realizes that his friends are everything, but yet he's constantly pushing them away? And I'm just like, when are you going to get it through your head that your friends aren't going to run away from you because you're a monster, that they are here for you, and you just need to let them help you?
Maybe after he gets out of school in the real world and starts, doing his missions in Order of the Phoenix, he learns to appreciate them more.
But again,
or maybe he just never will, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he suffers from such depression and why he hates himself and thinks that he's no good for Tonks, is because he never gets past that, and he feels like the death of Lily and James and Sirius and Peter Pettigrew were all his fault. Well, not the death of Sirius. Sirius
I swear, if we get to Lily and James's death and all we get is Remus feeling sorry for himself, I'm going to be very angry about this story. Very angry.
You can't be angry about. That's going to happen.
Oh, but it's going to ruin it.
The person I love did this. How? It's just the story. You can't have the story without that. That is a point where it has to happen. That is exactly how it has to go down. It's
going to be terrible. It's going to be awful. I just don't want to hate it.
I just think with this story, Remus should have had like this steep growth and just getting better and better, and then when that happens, then he can have his like downfall into depression, and
that would make it dramatic, right?
Yeah,
that would make it dramatic.
That
would make it devastating as a reader to like watch him grow this whole time, and then boom, and then Dark Night of the Soul moment. But we're not getting that.
Everything that has helped him grow and love to this point is now gone, and he has nothing. He has hit rock bottom.
Right. That would make that. That's why there should be a trajectory. You're absolutely right. Well, that's what I'm saying. That is the realistic reaction. But when you are crafting a story, it's not going to have an impact if it's literally the same moment as every other moment that you've had in the story this whole time, because he hasn't grown at all and developed like his friends have developed. And
like, you can have the roller coaster where it's up and down, but have different dips.
Yeah,
it's like the same thing in every dip.
Right. It's even with depression, like, yeah, he's still a teenager. Yes, even as an adult, he's still depressed, but depression evolves and grows. As you grow, you develop coping mechanisms to deal with it. Whether they're healthy or not is a whole other conversation. But the dynamic would shift as you grow and as situations change. And it's literally just the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
While Lily, James, and everyone else are kind of going and doing this.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when we get to the point where Lily and James pass away, if there's no real solid growth between like now and then, it's just going to be like, it's not going to hit.
Exactly.
There's not going to be any gut punch from our perspective.
I mean, that being said, I know we've been talking a little bit bad about the story, but honestly, that's the only bad thing I can say about the story up until this point.
I have had nothing bad to say about the story other than this thing here.
Just in case anyone watches this one and thinks, oh my god, they hate this story. No, we don't. It's just this particular dynamic with Remus.
Maddie is like, I have had enough. I have had enough. 100 chapters ago, Maddie is like, F this. I don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, girl, I hear you. I've had enough of it too. We still got like 50 chapters left to read. And I'm like, dude, you got 50 chapters. Grow, or I'm gonna die.
Remus has had good growth becoming a tutor. I think the one moment that could have changed this whole feeling and maybe made this whole werewolf attack hit a little bit more is if he showed that growth with his friends in the woods. If he had said, yeah, grab the cloak, come with me.
Let's do this thing. That would have been a great moment, and that would have been badass if they all went in there and they were like firing hexes and shit went down and the tree lady. That could have been cool as shit.
Exactly.
Instead, it was not. Alright, the tree lady was cool.
The tree lady was very cool.
But then it was just, oh, werewolf encounter 2.0. Kind of the same thing, but with a man this time.
Yeah.
It was just... And to think, actually, to know that it's Harry who makes him grow the F up.
Right.
I mean, there's a point there. Harry does thump the sense into him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. So that's how long we have to wait for growth.
Oh, God. All the way until Deathly Hallows. Right? I don't know. I'd be pretty ashamed. Yeah, Harry gives him a quick kick, swift kick in the ass. And I'm just like, someone in this story needs to kick his ass a little bit. Something. Because we're not getting nothing. Nothing is happening. But yes, that being said, we do really like this story. And if this is the first video you're watching where we're reading all the young dudes and you're listening to both of us rant about this, we don't hate the story. There's just one dynamic is really driving me up the wall. And I'm glad I'm not alone, that it's starting to bug you too.
I mean, it doesn't bug me, but I see where the story could have been improved.
Right.
Like I said, I don't hate it. Because I can kind of see it. But, you know. Like real world depression, sure, you can just kind of get on a level and just get stuck there. But story-wise, you kind of want that growth. So your big, dramatic, tragic sequence
you can still have growth
artist.
And still be depressed. You can still do all that stuff. He was too depressed for Dora, which wasn't her fault. Wow, I said something positive about their relationship.
I didn't even think about that. Dan is like the number one hater of the Dora Remus relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And he's defending Remus on this. That's just so funny. I didn't even get the irony of that.
That's too funny.
But
yeah.
That's great.
I'm just... I'm... You know, the thing that I've noticed about this story is my favorite chapters in this story are the chapters when it's everyone together and things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
When it's just Remus by himself, I'm not into it that much. Well, not that. I just don't enjoy those chapters as much as I do the other chapters. Yeah. And it's kind of like, well, he's your protagonist. You should. You want to be in his head and know what he's. You want to like him. You know.
You want all the young dudes, not the one young dude.
Yeah, and I think as we're going through this story, that's what I'm realizing. These are the incidents I really like in the story are the subtle little nods to the canon, like when they talk about Kettlebird missing his limbs.
Yeah.
And like the different dynamics and other things going on, the stuff with the war and how the characters respond to the war. But, you know, even it's usually those bits are the bits I really like. Like the camping stuff, I liked the camping stuff.
Yeah.
That was good. And that seemed like, oh, Remus is growing. He came out. This is good. That was good stuff. And then,
What are you gonna do?
and I hate to say it, but I'm gonna say it.
Uh-oh.
I'm a little bored with his relationship with Sirius.
You take that back.
I am sorry.
How dare you?
I am a little bit.
I think there's been too much emphasis on it past few chapters.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe
I think it's just been overdone. Like, you had that whole build up and then they were together. It's like, okay, time to like start backing off. You know, they can have their honeymoon period or whatever, but you gotta
Right.
start letting it fade out and bring his other issues up. Well, I guess they're kind of doing that, but it seems like they're still bringing their relationship problems, I guess, up too much.
I don't know what it is that's got me kind of like, okay. Like,
I think it's like, you know, when you watch a show, like a sitcom or something, and then there's that couple where it's like, will they, won't they?
Yeah,
and then they do, and then the show just sucks after that.
Well, yeah, because it's the build up, right?
Yeah.
The build up and the tension is better. That's why, like, romance novels end when the characters get together. Because the whole crux of the book is, will they, won't they, will they, won't they? Oh, they almost do. Then some bad shit happens, and then they're never going to get together. And then the end of the book is that they get together.
Yeah.
But then that's what TV shows do all the time. I think, you know what I think it is? And it's not the fact that I hate that they're together or they're, I like the dynamic they have with each other, but I think now that they're together, Remus still does this, like, worship thing with Sirius that is kind of like, I don't know, like, almost like grateful that a god would date him kind of thing. I don't know. I can't put my finger on what it is, but it's kind of like that, and I'm like, it's like, he's into you. Like, accept it. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's just, and maybe that's my issue. Maybe it's just been so in our faces over the last few chapters that maybe we need, like, something else to happen other than Sirius being the perfect boyfriend 24/7 in the chapters. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Never watched Friends, so I don't know.
Dan, I know what you're talking about with Rachel and Ross. They won't they'd for seasons.
Did they?
They did eventually. Took fucking forever. Took a long time. They did, and then they didn't.
One show where they did that I didn't really like was Scrubs. With Elliot and Zach Braff's character, JD.
Yeah.
They did it so much that it was just like, I don't care anymore. Like, they did the whole thing where they got together and then they broke up. And then they got together again. Alright, end it there. That's fine. They broke up. And then it was just like, they tried to make tension between them and stuff. And so you get this. Again, love Scrubs. Just didn't like that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's... I mean, I think The Office is a great example, too. Jim and Pam. The whole dynamic with Jim and Pam and everyone else is absolutely great. And then they get together. And it's great that they get together, but then after that, it just is not as good. Because well, I think the show went on for too long. But then the dynamic that Jim and Pam have as the show goes on just gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
Mm-hmm. One show where you don't have to worry about relationships lasting too long, Game of Thrones.
Heck yeah!
Usually one of them is going to die.
That's right.
Very soon.
That's right. Or one of them marries the other one and then locks her in a tower so she dies starving and trying to eat her own fingers.
Yeah. Normal relationship stuff.
Yeah. Or you bully your husband into going south and then he loses his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
They don't know who I'm talking about. Boring may be a good way to describe it, maybe. All we get are 1,000 different ways Remus hates himself. Maddie and I are on the same anger wavelength with this.
You guys really are.
Remus self-loathing thing, I think.
Turning into a Remus 13 Reasons Why.
It just, I don't know. Eat her own fingers. Damn differences between the show and the books. That's why you gotta listen to read the books, Dan. The books are better. Maddie, yeah, hell yeah. She's like, we are, girl. We're Remus. We hate Remus more than he hates himself right now, I think. That's where it's at.
Jesus. That's pretty bad.
Hang on. What was the next one? It's 130 what?
35?
133. Oh god, 133. Okay. So that's means
okay, because we're doing 3 streams this week.
We are doing 3 streams this week.
So you can catch us again on Thursday and another one on Saturday,
where we will get closer and closer to chapter 188, where we will finish this story eventually. And I just want to know why so many people have read this story and by the end they're like, oh my god, it's a masterpiece. It's the greatest thing I ever read. It's better than Harry Potter. And I'm like, how far are we into this? We got 55 chapters left. And I'm like, dude, this is not as good as Harry Potter. We're just
in a slow point. The author just didn't know how to get from them getting together to James and Lily's death, so it's just gonna be slow, and then it'll be up again.
Better.
Have faith.
No, definitely not better. I don't know if I'll be available Saturday. Might be having wine with my parents. All right. Well, no biggie. Dan, keep it consistent. Give Game of Thrones a shot. It is good.
Yeah, it is.
It is really good. The books are so good. First book is kind of slow. Just trust us, it's so good.
Said a million times. If you can make it through the first one, it gets better.
Yeah.
The first one is literally an intro.
The first one is pretty much just
first one is just a prologue.
A big prologue for the story. Yeah. Kind of is.
The story starts in the last 10 to 15 chapters.
Yeah, it does. I know. But I didn't find the first book slow. I just found it all very interesting. But that's me.
I found it very slow the first time I read it.
Oh, I was like, I ate it all up. I was like, oh, man.
Everyone was talking about it, and I kind of forced myself to read it till I got to the end, and I was just like, oh, I gotta read the next one.
Yeah, the last 10, 15 chapters are just like a blitzkrieg of, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So good. So good. Yeah, Dan. Keep it up, dude. He's like, I really enjoy it. That's why I keep restarting. But yes, anyway, Thursday, we will be back. We will read some more. All the young dudes.
That's probably what we're going to be doing in the next however many live streams it takes to get through. Because we do have other things we want to read. But we want to finish this first.
Yes, we do have a lot of other things planned, so we do have to finish all the young dudes.
And this has been quite the undertaking and taking up a lot of time. So.
It has been taking up a lot of time. So we kind of want to wrap this up and move on to other projects. We've got other things we want to read. We want to get the ring theory stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
So we will stream Thursday. We will stream Saturday. and see how much of more we can get through.
Yeah, maybe we'll do an extra long stream Saturday or something. Try to get through a bunch because these chapters are getting long.
Chapters are getting long. Yeah.
All right. Until then,
So
everyone have a fantastic night.
Yes, and we'll see you on Thursday, everybody.